Have you ever heard a story so shocking that it stays with you forever? There's one such story in the Old Testament that I find the most disturbing in the entire Bible. This story is found in the book of Judges, chapters 19 to 21. It's a tale that might be considered inappropriate for minors and could bring back painful memories for some. So please be aware of its sensitive nature before you proceed. In those days, Israel had no king. People did what they thought was right, and there was much chaos and sin. Our story begins with a Levite who lived in a remote part of the hill country of Ephraim. Levites were members of the Hebrew tribe of Levi, set apart for religious duties. This Levite acquired a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. A concubine in those days was a woman who lived with a man but had lower status than his wife. This woman, however, was unfaithful to him. She left him and returned to her father's house in Bethlehem. There she stayed for 4 months. Imagine the Levite's feelings, hurt, betrayed, and determined to get her back. So he set off on a journey from the northern hill country of Ephraim to the southern town of Bethlehem. When the Levite arrived in Bethlehem, he found his concubine and her father. Her father was very hospitable, welcoming him warmly. The Levite was invited to stay. This hospitality went on for several days. Each day the Levite said, "I need to go home." But her father persuaded him to stay one more night. This repeated for several days until finally the Levite insisted, "I must leave now." With great respect for his host's hospitality, the Levite prepared to leave. He took his concubine and his servant, and they began their journey back home. This decision marked the beginning of a series of tragic events. The story that follows is dark and distressing. It shows the consequences of living without a moral compass and the impact of making choices without accountability. As we delve deeper into this story, we will uncover important lessons that are as relevant today as they were then. As the Levite, his concubine, and his servant traveled back north, they had to find places to rest along the way. In ancient Israel, hospitality was a significant aspect of the culture. Travelers relied on the kindness of strangers to provide them with shelter and food. As the day was ending, they approached a city named Gibeah, which belonged to the tribe of Benjamin. Gibeah seemed like a good place to rest for the night. The Levite and his party entered the city and sat in the town square, waiting for someone to offer them hospitality. In those times, it was common for people to invite travelers into their homes. But to their surprise, no one offered them shelter. As night fell, an old man returning from his work in the field saw them. He asked, "Why are you sitting here? Has no one taken you into their home?" The Levite replied, "No one has invited us in." The old man offered his home, saying, "You are welcome to stay with me. Do not spend the night in the square." The old man took them to his house. He fed the donkeys and provided food and drink for his guests. They were enjoying themselves when suddenly some wicked men of the city surrounded the house. These men were referred to as sons of Belial, which means worthless or wicked men. They shouted to the old man, demanding, "Bring out the man who came to your house so we can have sex with him." The old man went out to speak with them. He pleaded, "No, my brothers, do not commit this evil act. This man is my guest. Do not do such a vile thing." In a desperate attempt to protect his guest, the old man offered his own virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine to the mob. He said, "Let me bring them out to you. You can use them and do to them whatever you wish. But do not commit this outrageous act against this man." The men would not listen. They refused to leave without the Levite. In a horrifying decision, the Levite took his concubine and pushed her outside to them. The men of the city abused her all night long. They raped her repeatedly until morning. At dawn, they finally let her go. As the sun rose, the woman returned to the house where her master was staying. She collapsed at the door, with her hands on the threshold. When the Levite got up in the morning, he opened the door to continue his journey. There he found his concubine lying at the door. He said to her, "Get up, let's go." But there was no answer. She was dead. The Levite lifted her body onto his donkey and went home. When he arrived, he took a knife and cut her body into 12 pieces. He sent one piece to each of the 12 tribes of Israel, along with a message detailing the atrocity that had been committed. This gruesome act was meant to shock the tribes and call them to action against the wickedness that had occurred. When the tribes of Israel received the Levite's message and the pieces of his concubine's body, they were horrified. Nothing like this had ever happened in their history. The leaders of the tribes gathered to discuss what had occurred and what they should do about it. They realized that such evil could not go unpunished. The tribes united and decided to take action against the men of Gibeah. They sent messengers throughout Israel, calling for warriors to assemble and seek justice. An army was formed, consisting of men from all the tribes except Benjamin. They marched to Gibeah and demanded that the wicked men be handed over for punishment. The tribe of Benjamin refused to surrender the men of Gibeah. They chose to defend their kinsmen, even though they knew the men were guilty of a terrible crime. This decision led to a civil war between the tribe of Benjamin and the rest of Israel. The Israelites gathered at Mizpah, preparing for battle. They sought the Lord's guidance, asking who should lead the attack. The Lord answered, "Judah shall go first." The next day, the battle began. The Israelites fought bravely, but the Benjamites were fierce warriors. The first day of battle saw heavy losses on both sides. The war raged on for several days. Each side suffered significant casualties. The Israelites were determined to punish the wickedness of Gibeah, but the Benjamites fought to protect their own. The conflict was brutal and devastating. After suffering heavy losses, the Israelites wept before the Lord. They fasted, offered sacrifices, and sought God's guidance once more. The Lord assured them of victory, saying, "Go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hands." On the third day, the Israelites set an ambush around Gibeah. They drew the Benjamites out of the city, then launched a surprise attack. The Benjamites were overwhelmed. Many were killed, and the survivors fled into the wilderness. The city of Gibeah was destroyed. The war left a deep scar on the nation of Israel. Thousands of lives were lost, and the tribe of Benjamin was nearly wiped out. Only 600 Benjamite men survived. The rest of the tribe, including women and children, had been killed. With the tribe of Benjamin on the brink of extinction, the other tribes faced a new dilemma. They had sworn an oath not to give their daughters in marriage to the Benjamites. Without wives, the surviving men could not rebuild their tribe. The leaders of Israel gathered once more to find a solution. The leaders decided to spare 400 young women from Jabesh Gilead who had not been involved in the conflict. These women were given to the surviving Benjamites as wives. However, there were still 200 men without wives. The leaders devised another plan. They instructed the Benjamites to capture women from Shiloh during a festival. This way, they could marry without breaking the oath. During the festival, the Benjamites hid in the vineyards and watched the young women of Shiloh as they danced. When the time was right, they rushed out and seized 200 women, carrying them off as their wives. The families of the women were distressed, but the leaders of Israel explained that this was necessary to save the tribe of Benjamin. With new wives, the Benjamites began to rebuild their cities and their lives. They returned to their land, started families, and worked to restore what had been lost. The Civil War had left deep wounds, but it also brought important lessons. When there is no accountability, people tend to stray and make poor decisions. Judges 19:1 states, "In those days when there was no king in Israel." Without a king or a strong leader to enforce laws and maintain order, the people did whatever they wanted. This lack of accountability led to chaos and sin. When we do not have someone to hold us accountable, we are more likely to make bad decisions. We may act selfishly or immorally, thinking no one will notice or care. This story shows the dangers of living without accountability. Just like the Israelites, we need guidance and accountability to stay on the right path. In the story, the old man was willing to offer his own daughter and the Levite's concubine to the mob to protect his guest. This shows a disturbing disregard for the value of these women's lives. He believed the life of his male guest was more important than the lives of his daughter and the concubine. We must remember that every human being is made in the image of God and deserves respect and dignity. No one's life is more valuable than another's. We should treat all people with love and respect, recognizing their inherent worth. This lesson is crucial in our world today, where many people are mistreated or undervalued. The Book of Judges shows a pattern of the Israelites straying from God, facing consequences, and then turning back to Him. This cycle repeats throughout the book. In chapters 19 to 21, we see the extreme consequences of drifting away from God. The nation descended into violence, immorality, and chaos. When we stray from God, we open ourselves up to temptation and sin. We may start making decisions that we never thought we would. It is vital to maintain a close relationship with God and stay grounded in our faith. By doing so, we can avoid falling into the same traps as the Israelites. The Israelites' decision to attack the Benjamites led to a civil war that caused the death of thousands. The Benjamites' refusal to surrender the wicked men of Gibeah led to the near extinction of their tribe. These events show how one bad decision can lead to many more, affecting countless lives. We cannot choose the consequences of our actions. Once we make a decision, we must face the outcomes, which can sometimes be far-reaching and affect many people. This story reminds us to think carefully about our choices and consider the potential consequences. Even in the midst of their most destructive decisions, God showed grace to the Israelites. He allowed the tribe of Benjamin to rebuild and continue. This demonstrates that no matter how far we stray or how many bad decisions we make, God's grace is always available to us. The book of Judges ends with the statement, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." This final verse summarizes the entire book and highlights the need for a righteous leader and the importance of following God's guidance. Although the Israelites experienced severe consequences for their actions, God's grace was evident. He allowed the tribe of Benjamin to survive and rebuild, showing that even when we make terrible mistakes, redemption is possible. This is a powerful reminder of God's mercy and love. As we reflect on this story, let's remember that every decision we make has consequences. We may not be able to choose the outcomes, but we can strive to make wise and moral choices. By staying close to God and seeking accountability, we can avoid many pitfalls and live in a way that honors Him. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this story and its lessons insightful, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Share your thoughts and let us know what other biblical stories you would like to explore. Your support helps us continue to create content that brings God's Word to life. See you in the next video. God bless you.